Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I want to talk just a little bit about my issue with series. And of course, one of my issues is that I can't seem to pronounce the plural of that word. However, that being said, I, growing up, absolutely loved finding books in a series. In fact, the first books that I remember reading were the Nancy Drew books in the original publication version. I, as a second grader or first grader, wanted to read the books that were up in my aunt's bedroom. My mom made me call her, and I just have this memory of calling her, asking to read those books. So I loved series. I loved being able to keep going with these characters that I fell in love with. If you looked at my shelves, you would not guess that I have a problem now with not finishing series. So take, for example, a lot of the books that I've gotten recently. So I have one of my all-time favorite series. I have Anne of Green Gables. I've read every book in the series, including the two that are not in this set. I have the Chronicles of Narnia. Like, seriously, this is the first series that I ever truly, truly loved. Every single book of, the whole set. I love it. No, I'm not including Lord of the Rings in here because Lord of the Rings is not a series. Another series that got me into fantasy, the Pride and Chronicles. Also don't know how to pronounce that. And then more recently, as an adult, I got into series like Aragon and Percy Jackson. And of course, Harry Potter. But I've shown those books enough, so I'm not bringing them out here. I cannot remember the last time that I finished a series. I can't remember the last time that I read past book one in a series, even if I enjoyed book one. I'm sure if I took the time to look through my Goodreads, I would find a whole bunch of first in a series that I liked, but didn't continue. I can't track it, pin it down specifically to this, but I'm pretty sure that this series is the culprit. I read this, absolutely loved it, devoured it, had to read the next. Got the next, loved it. And then I remember it was the first Amazon Prime Day. They had the set, and I decided to get it. Allegiant had already been out for quite a while, and I had heard all sorts of warnings about that book, and I decided, okay, I'll read it. I vividly remember sitting at the kitchen table, finishing Allegiant and going, that was stupid. Why? I have never felt so strongly about the end of a series as I did with this trilogy. Veronica Roth, she ruined the entire series. Like, why did I invest so much in these characters for her to do that at the end? Obviously, I'm not going to talk about it, but I don't recommend reading Allegiant. I don't recommend it. Just imagine how you think the series would end and stick with it. Just don't read Allegiant. Since reading Allegiant, which there's no way I would ever own that book, but since reading Allegiant, I can't think of another series that I've actually read the sequel. There's been so many that I've read first books and like, oh, these are good. And then gone, do I feel compelled to pick up the other books in the series? No. And we'll get to test this theory with Raybear. If you saw my last wrap-up, you would see my September wrap-up, you would see how much I absolutely adored Raybear. Like, along with Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky, Raybear, top favorite book of the year. One of the favorite books I've read all year and in a long time. Now, Raybear is a duology, so it has that going for it. It's not getting stretched into a trilogy or a quartet, or a long series. But I'm so nervous to get Redemptor. Now, I've heard a lot of good things about Redemptor, and I saw the amazing Illumicrate editions and plunked down a pretty penny on those. So when those come in, I'm going to test I haven't finished a series since Veronica Roth ruined series for me. Now, what is it? What is it about series that it's such an issue? Why is it such an issue that the first book is amazing and you can't tell the whole story in a first book? It would be too long. Why would you do that? Why would you tell the whole first book? Why would you tell the whole story in the first book? You need more time. I really like the idea of building things together, building one upon another upon another. Some of my favorite books of all time, they do this. Harry Potter, that series is put together so well. I absolutely love how it builds and how each book has something that we need to learn and glean, and it's put together well. There were so many opportunities for disappointment. Like at the end of book 6, when you're first reading through it, when book 7 hadn't even been published, everyone's going, what? That's what I need in a series. But after Divergent, I had no desire to complete it. No desire to get to the end of the trilogy or quartet or whatever and be utterly let down. Thanks, Veronica Roth. So what is it about series that people don't put together well? Why is it so easy to pick up the first book in a series and go, oh, that's great? Is it the fact that you can use, or in this case, I can use my own imagination to think, oh, well, this is how I would end it, so I'm okay with that ending. I think that's great. And then when I read the other books, it doesn't live up to that, or they do something really terrible with it. Veronica Roth. Yeah, I'm gonna keep bringing that up. Is it that the author had a good starting point? They had a really good thought for how they were going to open their world, but they didn't have any thought on how they were going to bring it all together. I think that happens a lot with debut authors, that they don't know ultimately where the story will go. They don't know how this will ultimately get wrapped up. And so they have a great first book, and then they've signed a contract and they need to do the others, and they don't know how it's going to finish. I'm not saying that the authors need to know exactly what the stories are when they start to write it, but they need to know the direction. They need to know what's going to be revealed. They need to know what they need to reveal in the second book and what they need to reveal in the third book to tell a complete story in those amount of pages without the readers going, you could have done it in less, you needed more. Or, why did you do this? Why did you mess around with this? As the more I talk in this video, and I have no script, no plan, I just knew I wanted to talk about the fact that I have a problem finishing series. I think a new goal for myself going forward might be to give series a chance. I think one of the things that I'm going to do for next year, because there's only 2.5 months left of this year, I think for next year, one of my challenges is going to be to go through my past reading profile, find all of the first books in series that I rated decently. Like you'll see in my wrap up for this month, the book Wither, I have no intention of ever touching any of the other books. That was a terrible book. I'm not going to read the rest of the series. I'm not going to feel compelled to finish a terrible series that started off terribly. What I'm thinking of challenging myself with is finding all of the ones that I rated 4 stars or even 5 stars and actually finishing the series. And then revisiting this concept after. Maybe looking at these series and comparing the series together and see what was done well and what wasn't. Because like with series like Anne of Green Gables, that wasn't like a built together series, like everything building one upon the other like Harry Potter. With Anne of Green Gables, you are invested in the character, you're invested in Anne, and you see her life as she grows. You just keep coming back to this person and seeing what she encounters as she enters adulthood, as she gets married, as she deals with her raising her kids. That's a great way to do a series too. With things like Percy Jackson, that he has an overall structure to it. Each episode is contained within the book, but they all build up to, and the final build up makes sense. Those are some types of series where where it makes sense. I guess Percy Jackson has the same series feel that Harry Potter does. There's individual tasks, individual conflicts, problems in the story that need to be solved. Like with Harry Potter, in, say, the 4th book, the problem is you've got the Triwizard Tournament. Oh, oops, there's a 4th name that comes out of the Goblet of Fire. It's Harry's. He's not supposed to be in there. So they have to figure out, why is his name in there? And he has to face all of these challenges. But it also still ties into the overall story, because you bring back Wormtail from book 3, and then you bring in Voldemort and how that transforms and how it was set up the whole way and what his plan is going forward. So it both has an individual episodic feel, but it also fits with the whole story. It makes sense. That's what I appreciate about books. And it takes planning, and it's not something where you can just like vomit out all of these series. Because admittedly, Rick Riordan's book with Percy Jackson and a lot of the others, his formula becomes a little bit repetitive. But he does it fairly decently, so it's not, it's not terrible. But you've got that, and it fits, it works. And I don't know if some of these other series that I've started and enjoyed, like say Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky, that's going to be a series that I finish, because the 3rd book, I believe, is coming out next year, and there's already a sequel. But my problem is I loved Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky so much that I don't want to be let down. Thank you, Veronica Roth. Ultimately, where I've come on this rambly video talking all about series is next year challenge to myself is to finish all of the series that I've started and enjoyed. We shall see if I live up to that challenge. Thanks so much for joining me. Feel free, please talk in the comments about series that you've had issues with. Do you always finish series? Do you never finish series? Was there a series that just ruined series for you, like the Divergent trilogy? For me, I would love to chat with you in the comments. See you in my next video.